When you don't have time for all those facts, when you don't have an hour free and need to be informed, take a listen to today's Morning Moment, coming up right now.
You're listening to A Radio. Because the Charter is part of the Constitution, no part of it can be changed by federal or provincial governments. The House of Commons, the Senate, and 2/3 of the provinces representing over 50% of Canadians must approve any changes to the Charter or any part of the Constitution. Could that be any clearer?
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds.
Thank you for joining us. You're listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. We are on Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. You can find us on most social media platforms such as iTunes, Spotify and iHeartRadio. Go to our website, aradio.wordpress.com, for details, where you'll find more content and details on our podcasts and more. Due to recent actions by the Federal Liberal Communist Government of Canada, I feel required to do this podcast. Now, we first covered this in February of this year, February 3 to be precise. The actual podcast is EHR 659, Freedom, Thought and Speech Under Attack, Trudeau, February 3, 2020. And you can find that on Spreaker.com, episode 659. Anyway, I'm going to play a clip from a Tom, I have to forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name, Tom Kimiek, K-M-I-E-C, on Twitter. He has highlighted what the Federal Liberal Communist Government of Canada is planning to do in the latest throne speech. They got caught unawares in February and they backed down. They've tried to sneak this in again.
You'll never believe the latest news out of Liberal Ottawa. There's a government commission report that's going to be regulating free speech.
So how will this work? How are you going to regulate websites? How are you going to register all that? Do you buy these recommendations?
But we would ask that they have a license, yes.
The government of Canada is saying it's going to decide what news you should believe and what news you shouldn't believe. This is wrong. In a free country like Canada, you should be able to express your views without government censorship interfering with your ability to speak your mind. In Canada, we have the right to freedom of speech, the right to express your views however you wish. I'm going to continue with my Conservative colleagues to defend the right of free speech that Canadians through the generations have fought to defend. Join me. Share this video. This is the only chance we're going to have to push back against this massive government intrusion by a Liberal cabinet minister intent on telling us what news is trustworthy and which one isn't. We can't let them do that.
Now, according to the Canadian Superior Courts Judges Association, they actually have a website. This piece is entitled The Courts and Constitution. You can look them up and you can read this piece yourself. The first heading, Constitutional Rights. The Constitution Act of 1982 forms the legal basis for the Canadian state. It incorporates the British North America Act, the statute that created Canada in 1867, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which enshrines legal, social and political rights of Canadian citizens and minority groups. It guarantees freedom of speech and religion and the right to vote in elections, and prevents government from discriminating against people on the basis of race, ethnic origin, gender, age, or disability. The Charter also protects individuals from being searched or arrested without cause and guarantees a fair trial to those accused of crimes. Now, this is the interesting bit. The role of courts. Courts play an integral role to upholding Charter rights. In criminal cases, judges have the power to quash charges if the police abuse their powers and reject evidence obtained by violating suspects' Charter rights, as well as citizens who believe law and government actions violate their Charter rights can apply to the courts for a ruling on its validity. The government must also show that any violation of rights of any individual or minority groups is reasonable and justified in a free and democratic society. Judges have the power to strike down any law that violates the Charter, or they may order the government to amend the law to make it consistent with the Charter. Parliament and provincial and territorial legislatures can use Charter's notwithstanding clause to overrule the courts and keep discriminatory law in force, but the governments have been reluctant to use this power to limit the constitutional rights of their citizens. Under the government constitution, the federal government is responsible for national issues such as defence, foreign policy, while provinces and territories regulate education, health care, and other fields of local importance. If a dispute arises over jurisdiction, the courts may be called upon to interpret the Constitution and decide which level of government is responsible for implementing policy and service. Now, on their website, as their lawyers, they have some sort of disclaimer saying something along the lines that it is some sort of overview. But here's my comment. No one should be allowed, that's right, no one should be allowed to produce such an important document that's not written in plain English, should they? Stands to reason. Why should you need a lawyer to interpret the Charter? Nuts. But there's a twist. There's always a twist, isn't there? After all, if they did write it in plain English, we wouldn't have any need for so many lawyers, would we? So obviously that's not in their interest, for it to be open and transparent. So all we can do at this time is to go on what's written, as I'm not a lawyer and have zero interest to ever being one. Now, this document is on my website. Just go to aradio.wordpress.com and click on Charter of Rights and Freedoms tab. But this is the key. Section 2 of the Charter. Listen carefully. Everyone has the following fundamental rights. A. Freedom of conscience and religion. B. Freedom of thought, belief, opinion, expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication. That's key. Freedom of peaceful assembly. And D. Freedom of association. There it is. Now, I've covered that many times till I'm blue in the face, but bear with me again. Trudeau, by attempting to pass a law that usurps the rights that are clearly marked out in the Charter, and I'll read it again, Section 2, everyone has the following fundamental rights. A. Freedom of conscience and religion. B. Freedom of thought, belief, opinion and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication. And C. Freedom of peaceful assembly. And D. Freedom of association. So he is trying to pass a law that interferes with Canadians' rights. As stated quite clearly, it's unconstitutional. Nowhere in the document does it say you have to be registered to speak. You have to be approved by the Government of Canada to speak. Nowhere, Mr. Trudeau, nowhere. And neither should it. Now, here's the pièce de résistance, I think it's called. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The Constitution of Canada contains the Canada Act 1982, which has two parts. The Constitution Act 1982 and the British North America Act 1867, later renamed the Constitution Act. 1867. It is the Constitution Act of 1982 that contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, known as the Charter. Because the Charter is part of the Constitution, no part of it can be changed by federal or provincial governments. The House of Commons, the Senate, and 2/3 of the provinces representing over 50% of Canadians must approve any changes to the Charter or any part of the Constitution. Could that be any clearer? So, not only is it the Supreme Court's duty and obligation to strike down any law that Trudeau is planning to move forward, to force Canadians to be regulated to speak. I'm going to read it again. The House of Commons, the Senate, and 2/3 of the provinces representing 50% of Canadians must approve any changes to the Charter or any part of the Constitution. How much clearer can that be? In other words, Trudeau can't pass laws that regulate speech because it's unconstitutional. MPs know this. How can any MP vote for this? This is unconstitutional. They are breaking the law of Canada. They are taking away your free speech, which is unconstitutional. You have the right to speak on any form of media. I have the right to speak on any form of media without permission from the federal government of Canada. If we let this go, this is the thin end of the wedge. I'm going to be getting on to my MP, who is almost impossible to get hold of, and I'm going to scream and shout until he does something. I couldn't care less if it's COVID-19 or COVID-91. Do your darn job and get this Prime Minister removed from office. He's acting beyond the Constitution of Canada. He has no right to even bring forward a bill like this. Whoever advised him, because Trudeau's not a lawyer, is acting illegally and should be prosecuted for such. They are pushing the boundaries to see how many people fight back. Let's hope it's more than 3. Please pass this podcast on. And again, it's not about me. It's about the Constitution and your rights to speak on what you want, when you want, where you want, and how you want. And finally, I want to thank Hutch Bailey Jr. for allowing me to go on his Cold War radio program the other night and playing that clip. I think he wasn't expecting what I did, and I apologise if he got upset about it. I wasn't trying to upset him at all. I just wanted to reach a wider audience beyond Canada so that people outside of Canada know exactly what's going on inside Canada. Because the mainstream media will never tell what's going on here. And the mainstream media, certainly in the United States, will never cover it. We are being shut down. Our free speech is being taken from us, drip by drip by drip. And we can't allow that to continue. Any government, any party, any MP that does this, who stands for this, must be removed from office. I can't put it any simpler than that. If the leader of the opposition doesn't stand up and demand this bill be removed, he should be removed. Because it's part of their job to protect our Constitution, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Nothing more, nothing less. It's the highest rule in politics. They have to protect the Charter. And that's my comment. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Parler, Spotify, and email. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/aradio. That's EHRADIO, a radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 11:45 Eastern, for our morning moment or tweak. And tell your friends, pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the Canadian mainstream media want you to know. This time, more than any in history, we all need to trust but verify.